You're listening to the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, a podcast of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. It's season 9 here at the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, and we're excited because 9 comes before 10, which comes before, well, you know what I mean. We're having a blast, still talking about all things science fiction, and this season is set to be our biggest and most epic season yet. We're having more fun than we've ever had, and we invite you to invite all of your friends and tune in each week to new episodes as we explore the cosmos of science fiction. We're getting ready to blast off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Over a year and a half ago, the Big Sci-Fi Podcast had the pleasure of an interview with a filmmaker named Jeffrey Morris. The interview was released on December the 29th, 2023, and a lot has transpired since the airing of that episode. A little recap. Back on that date when we first met Jeffrey, I called him a dreamer who makes the dreams come true. His production company, Future Dude Entertainment, was in the early stages of making his film, The Eagle Obsession. Now, unlike Kirk, who didn't go back to check on how Khan was doing, and we all know how that was handled, we are going back to discuss the completed film. And Jeffrey was so gracious to supply us with the screener so we could return to SETI Alpha 5 and see how his seed has grown and become the amazing film we are here to discuss. But before we can start, let the crew of the SS Botany Bay introduce themselves to you. They are Adina.
Botany Bay? Oh, no.
Botany Bay. Brian?
Hey, it's Brian from Ohio. Does that work? I don't think that works, but it's where I'm really from.
That's fine.
Right.
And my good friend, Chris Fox.
Hey, I'm from Toronto, and I'm trying to remember what the line is. What's the matter? What's the matter? This is Chekhov. This is Captain Terrell when he's asking Chekhov what the matter. What's like? Why is he so freaked out?
Okay, moving right along, folks.
Moving right along.
This is Steve's fault. He brought up Botany
Hey,
Bay.
I didn't initiate it.
But
I want to put that out there.
Let me introduce Jeffrey. Please say hello to the audience, my friend.
Hey there. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And, I'd like to say, now that the film's in the can, what are your personal thoughts on its outcome?
Well, I'm really happy with how it turned out. It was an incredible challenge to put this film together, and it took us, from the idea to completion was nearly 2.5 years, and there was a lot. It was actually over 2.5 years. And there's, when you make something like this and you set goals and you say, I want to interview these people or I want to go to these places, you're not entirely sure how you're going to pull it off. And pretty much everything I wanted to do with this film, we were able to figure it out. And it evolved. And sorry, I lost my light there. It evolved and changed over time as we were producing the thing, and but that's kind of par for the course with this sort of stuff. It does evolve and change. So I'm very happy with how it turned out and very proud with what we created.
Yeah. So what do you consider like the highlights of the film? What are the moments that you personally look back when you watch it again and again and again that you go, that was like exactly what I wanted to see in this film?
I think that there were several of the interactions that were at a level that I didn't expect, like Barbara Bain, for example. She was obviously, anytime you meet people who portrayed heroes, from childhood, it's always a little bit awe-inspiring, right? And the thing that I was so happy about with this film was that everybody, it ended up being conversations as opposed to interviews, which was important to me. I wanted it to feel like we were in locations that were beautiful and interesting and intriguing, and the last thing I wanted was this to feel like a typical documentary. I'm a narrative filmmaker. I'm not a documentarian really per se, but I decided to bring my narrative film and visual style to this documentary. So there are some really spectacular moments visually in the film, a lot of scope, cool locations. But I think most important to the conversation is how they turned out. And I was very enthusiastic with the way the Barbara Bain interview went, but the way that William Shatner, I think that was pretty amazing.
That was the best. My wife loved that interview. So did I.
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost, she said, I had pauses, she goes, it's like Shatner's interviewing him, not the other way around.
Right. Yeah. No, what I thought was so cool about that is it showed how engaged he was in the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just a thing where we were just, the last thing I wanted to do was hang out with William Shatner and go, so what was it like when you fought the Gorn, or something? Right. You know what I mean? It was like, having seen You Can Call Me Bill and knowing some things about him, he's a pretty deep, intelligent guy, incredibly intelligent man, actually. And I was like, when I was preparing for this interaction, I was like, I want to go there. I want this to be deep. I want people to see him and who he really is in this. Mm-hmm. And then also that the opportunity to interview him on the bridge of the Enterprise, that was pretty magical too. So yeah.
What was the process like for you narratively trying to put the story together about, okay, here are the beats I kind of want to hit in this documentary?
I decided that, here's the thing. First off, let's back way out. It's like there's Space 1999 is not as well known as something like Star Trek or Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's reasonably obscure. It only had 2 seasons. It does have, millions of people did watch it, and then certainly fans and people who remember it and continue to talk about it to this day. But if you really think about Space 1999, it's not something that's like a huge pop cultural thing, right? Mm-hmm. So first off, I really felt like this film had to speak to people who'd never heard of it. That was the first thing. Second, I didn't want to make a film that was just for sci-fi fans. I was thinking, first off, the whole interest of science fiction for me has never been about escapism. It was really always about a foundational. It's like a launch pad for my dreams of the future, and that's why I've always had leaned toward hard sci-fi throughout my life. Things like Arthur C. Clarke and Ben Bova and those sorts of authors, Larry Niven. As a child, I loved those kinds of books, and I wanted to tell a story that was really about humanism, and that was really about this dream of a human future that a lot of us hoped for that hasn't happened yet. So that was the foundation for making the film for me, was to say, how can I tell a story that's about humanity and really open I wanted to open the floodgates on this idea that science fiction really isn't about escapism or conventions or cosplay or there's this aspect that really has to do with projecting forward and imagining futures and then creating those futures. So that's a big part of it. I hope I answered your question, but that's
no, it was very clear in the film, and I like just where you were coming from with that. And I think what you did so well is you got to show someone like me, big Star Trek fan, love it, did my own little mini documentary about it and how it helped me through my mom's death and all that stuff. But you're able to show, okay, there's Star Trek, which is great, but there's also Space 1999. And I got to watch part of this with my wife, and we kind of looked at each other and we're like, okay, we're watching Space 1999. And I think you did a great job of showing why it's so important, what makes it so special. Yeah.
And it came along at this really interesting time where you're kind of smack dab between the Apollo missions ending in Star Wars, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was a very unique period there. And I'm not going to make any sort of excuses for there are elements of Space 1999, like the basic plot, the moon being blasted out of orbit and flying around the universe. I know there's some fans that are into that. I'm, personally, even as a child, when I saw that when I was 7, I was like, I don't think that would happen, but there was still
Pacific Ocean,
yeah, there were still really cool characters in the first season for me. And the, I liked the exploration of these big ideas and the tone of it, and just and obviously the production values were so high, the set designs and the costumes and the effects work, for a TV series, really quite amazing. So, and the one thing is, even though the premise was ludicrous, the characters appeared to they played it as real. Certainly in the first season, they really played it like it, so it's like you can kind of just go with it. You go with it. It's like, yeah, okay, this is cool, and so, and then also obviously for me, the Eagle and its ties to what it felt like, real space exploration and that sort of thing. It really felt like hardware that was going to be forthcoming. That was a big deal. So
yeah.
Well,
Adina?
you certainly accomplished with me the desire to watch Space 1999. I've watched a couple of the first episodes in that season 1 and was deeply intrigued. We had Jerry Anderson's son on our podcast too, to talk about Anderson's whole work that is quite vast. And but watching this documentary, you kind of touched on it, Mr. Morris, just the human story behind Space 1999, your own human story as a kid watching the show, dreaming of this possible future. And then you spoke with people that were a part of the show, were a part of Star Trek, were a part of, the gentleman who built that huge model. This really, what I loved about the documentary, the visuals are stunning.
Oh yeah.
They're absolutely breathtaking. And seeing the Enterprise flying with the Eagle 2 and then the Lost in Space ship 2 is phenomenal. So nerdy in all the good ways. Yeah. But really just the human nature of the story. The disappointment of why aren't we there yet? Why didn't certain things happen to at least get us closer to a future like Space 1999 or Star Trek? I think that was what surprised me to a degree, was it made me stop and go, oh my gosh, like, why aren't we there yet? But then also the hope of, well, we still have it in us to get there.
We do.
And I love bringing in the classroom of kids too. That was maybe some of my favorite stuff, because that just was like, man, these kids watch this old show and were inspired by them, by your story.
Yes.
And so that was just beautiful. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate your kind words and everything all of you have said positively about the film. It means a lot to me. It's an opportunity. I wanted to use this film as an opportunity to showcase something that so many of us feel that so many others don't understand, if that makes sense. I've had people tell me, I actually had a guy come up to me. I showed a preview of this in Louisville at Wonderfest back in June. And I had a guy come up to me, a gentleman came up, and he was wiping tears away, and he said, I can use your film to finally explain to my wife and to my friends why I love this stuff so much. And that was really moving for me to hear that. It's like that. And I've heard that more than once. People were like, you represented us here. You helped, you're going to help the world understand us better, And because like, to me, it's funny. I've never ascribed heavily to the word. People would describe, the terms nerd or geek for me. I've never bought those words for myself. I've never ever. I've always thought of myself as being an intelligent, creative person who liked, science fiction and liked these other, and nothing against people who do like those words and use those words. But sure, I think if you go back in time, 30, 40 years, those certainly weren't positive words.
Yeah, they were not.
They were very mean spirited when they were said. And I've always kind of remembered that. And I've been like, nope, that's not where I'm coming from. And I think this movie shows that, in a lot of ways. It's like, I studied a lot of science. I've studied a lot of film. I've studied a lot of business. I've studied, all those things had to come together to be able to do something like this and to even be able to interact with these people. And that, I think there's a behind the scenes aspect that you can make a whole documentary about making this documentary, so it's just,
which, I would watch.
Yeah.
I would love to watch that.
Says the budding filmmaker.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That we also ended up with a second film. I should add that there's Beyond the Eagle Obsession, which we're making, which is that's going to be a 45 to 50 minute film. One of the things that happened in making this, completing this project was, we ended up shooting almost 30 hours of footage. And it was very difficult whittling that 30 hours down to 90 minutes. And then really creating a narrative thread that, and that's what the voiceover does, right? So I actually wrote the voiceover last, like as I would go. So
right. Interesting.
Chris, there's a note for you.
Okay.
But, it's like one of the things I did is I would build we would build a sequence. We'd start figuring out like how we wanted the sequence to work. And then we would actually, lay in the music. I worked really hard on the music with this film, worked really hard to pull it all together and get it to work. And, we would lay in the music, we would edit to the music, and then I would add the voiceover. And then the voiceover had to kind of tie it all together, which I think worked really well, But the one thing that happened with this is that I started realizing as we're making it that some of the technical aspects, there were two things. There were aspects that were very technical. We actually shot a sequence where there was an aerospace engineer who talked about how the eagle could really work and function. And he even designed a real eagle. He shows that. And it's actually a great sequence, but I felt like, man, there are going to be people watching this movie and their eyes are going to glaze over. It's like if they're excited by the, by the humanity of this, they're not going to want to hear this technical stuff. And then the other aspect that I didn't want to do is, I didn't want to lean too far into the fandom. I thought that the one gentleman in Denmark was a great representative of Eagle fandom. But we shot a lot with collectors and went to some conventions and things like that. And so that stuff plus some new visual effects and some really cool behind the scenes elements, we're pulling that together in this Beyond the Eagle Obsession, and that's really geared toward fans. So the fans of the Eagle, fans of Space 1999, that's the movie for you. Whereas I was really trying to gear the Eagle Obsession to a general audience. Yeah. So
I definitely loved how you included the lunar module from the Apollo days, especially because I work for the company that built that.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yes, I work for Northrop Grumman, so that was really special. To kind of tie in all the places where you did tie in the real world, and hey, look what we had done back in the late 60s, early 70s, and again. It almost, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because it brings me down because I worked in the aerospace industry for 30 years, hoping that we would be further along than we are.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No. And, not getting political, but there's a lot of setbacks happening right now with it that are just unbelievable.
I'm living
setbacks.
that because, that is my
it's
career is living that right now.
It's mind-blowing setbacks. So, yeah, it's funny. This film, I worked very hard to not. Actually, I filmed a sequence with Michael Okuda, which will be in the special edition of this film when it comes out. And Michael and I did an interview. Went to a place called Global Effects where they have a mock-up of the lunar module. We were actually in the mock-up of the lunar module. We had all these costumes of all these classic space suits and all this stuff was there. And it was a great interview we did. The only issue I felt was that he and I talk a lot about the negative. We talked about, what has happened to our society because the Apollo missions ended, or the lack of this, the space race was driving it. And once we won, it sort of fell apart, and this idea that not for the scientists, not for the dreamers, not for so many of us. Right. And I still thought it was very important with this film to kind of keep it positive, especially in this day and age. It's so easy to go into negativity or victimization, that sort of thing. That's one thing I really tried to avoid with this film. Earlier drafts of the film were much darker. There were much more. It had much more of a darker turn to it, and I had even reached out to Sigourney Weaver. I was going to interview her about Alien and how dystopic science fiction kind of crept in. And that sort of thing. But I'm kind of glad it didn't happen because I think it would have given a tone to the film that it didn't need.
I agree. Agree.
Yeah, I think the uplifting portions of your film is you getting together with your childhood friend, meeting Charles Duke and
Yes.
having him, a real man who stepped on the moon,
Yes.
to chat with him about his experience. And he was so wonderfully folksy. I loved it very, very much. But
Well,
you already hit on it. To me, I think the highest point of the film, besides the Shatner interview, which is hilarious, but getting together with those elementary school kids, fifth graders, and having them get so excited about science on a show, like you said, that their parents may not have been born when it was on TV originally, possibly, and getting them excited about it. I wonder, and I wrote this down. I hope the kids have sent you photos of their finished Eagle models that you had given to them, because that was such a sign of gratitude to you, to them, for being part of that process of being the next explorers, the next scientists, the next designers. These kids are really, that's like you said, you want to have uplifting right there. These are the kids. This is the future of our science. Are these young fifth graders? And I know that when my daughter was in fifth grade, her class built rovers that they had to design on a Martian landscape to recreate what was going on with the first rovers that were on Mars. So congratulations on that sequence of the film. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Well, one of the things that was neat about the kids was I had no idea how they were going to react to seeing this, 50-year-old stuff. I had no idea. But what happened was they actually, it was almost like a proof for me that it was like validating, because it's like I've always thought that content was better than a lot of the content nowadays. Now you struggle because you go, okay, do I think that because I'm just stuck in the past? Do I think that because I can't? Well, it's like, no, I like all kinds of modern media. I do. There's modern media I like. I don't sit around watching old stuff all the time, but I do feel like at the core and the heart of a lot of this, there was something there that isn't there now. And so what happened was, it's almost like the kids validated that. They ate it up. They had no problem with the visual effects in Space 1999. They had no problem with the costumes or the music. They actually thought it was really cool. And the kids were just, so they went home and they were watching episodes. And then when I did other sessions with them, they were talking to me about the other episodes and, the whole thing. It was really something, because it was all on YouTube. So they're just watching it on YouTube,
Right.
And so they when the little girl says that she was inspired by Barbara Bain, I didn't put that in her head. She came up with that herself. That blew my mind that she did that.
Yeah.
So there was an absolute magic to having those kids involved and having that conversation with them. So I was really, really proud of that. It's great.
That's great.
I'm really glad that you had that interview with Barbara, because we're still behind in a lot of respects as a society in how we uplift women, give them opportunities to succeed. Now, we've come a long way, sure. Let's give credit where it's due. But as a father of an 11-year-old little girl, she's got all kinds of role models and women that she looks up to, that she sees. I made sure she watched the Biden inauguration so she could see Kamala Harris.
Sure.
Our first woman.
Sure.
I've got tears in my eyes. She's thinking I'm a little goofy dad, with tears in my eyes at something. But I'm like, listen, Peyton, you can do that.
Right.
Look at her.
Right.
You can do that too.
Right.
And I think that we talk about it with Nichelle Nichols in Star Trek, and maybe other women in different shows too. But I love that you went there with this.
Oh, thank you very much.
I just think it was so important.
I was trying to keep a balance. I didn't want it to be too heavy-handed, but it was, and especially in today's political environment, I didn't want to be, I want this to appeal to whatever walk of life you come from. But personally, I'm a big advocate for women's rights, and it's always been a big thing for me. And just like my friend said, you in the movie, she says, a lot of guys would have been like, sci-fi is just for guys. And it's like, I've just never lived in that world. I've always seen women as equals, always seen women as leaders. And, to me, watching a show like Space 1999, where there was a female co-lead of the series, right? And there were other women, and the women in that show had stuff to say. Like unlike the original Star Trek, it's not like yes, there were some women in the original Star Trek, of course, but it wasn't like Space 1999. It was Space 1999 was at a completely different level in terms of what the female characters were doing and interacting and how strong they were and how much they were part of the narrative. And growing up seeing that, I think, was incredibly important. So when I just offhandedly a few years back was having conversations, it must have been around 2017, 18, I was talking with my friend Anna. We were just out to dinner talking, and we started talking about this show, and I didn't even realize she watched that show back then, right? We would play space stuff all the time, but we were more like on the playground playing like space, Lost in Space and Star Trek and stuff, So then we started talking Space 1999. I'm like, that's awesome. And then I was like, when I made this film, I was like, I got to get her in there because it's such an interesting story. And then once I had met Barbara Bain, and Barbara and I had lunch and had this wonderful, wonderful interaction. We actually didn't talk much about Space 1999. We talked a lot about politics and, how we both grew up and our family lives and stuff like that. It was an amazing conversation. She's a very intelligent woman, very involved in literacy with young people. She's helped literally millions of kids learn to read.
Wow.
It's really something. So she's got, she grew up in Chicago in a very rough environment that Barbara Bain did. And she was telling me all about her childhood and some of the things that she saw as a child, horrific stuff, really something. And she grew up out of that. And so she was telling me that like the difference between how, as a matter of fact, we could have done a longer version of the interview because she talks a lot about her childhood and how for her, escaping the violence and the horrors of where she was growing up, it was going to the Chicago, the art museum in Chicago and things like that, right? The art, like what watching Star Trek and Space 1999 was for me as a kid who was dealing with a lot of racism and persecution and stuff like that. Like watching sci-fi was like a breath of fresh air, right? Yeah. For her, going to the library and going to the art museum was her breath of fresh air. So Barbara talked a lot about that. And so, she's a fascinating person. Like all these interviews, honestly, there's so much more to each one of them than what I was able to show, and like Shatner and I, we got into all kinds of environmental discussions, and he's deeply concerned about things like climate change. And also we have all that on film, but it wasn't relevant to this piece, so.
Well, that's the problem because you guys said you got 90 minutes to work with.
Yeah.
You want to get enough in it of everything to get the feeling of what the story is about.
Yep.
And get enough interviews, but you can only do snippets of it,
Right.
And
right.
You have to pick the best of the best. You have to be you're the editor, so I guess.
Yeah.
So
oh yeah. No, it was me and I had an editing partner, but he and I did my co-writer on this thing. We spent collectively 3,000 hours editing that thing. So it was a lot. And what we got into is what we started calling the potato chip metaphor. Like we got to get this down to like where you got a bag of like really good chips and you eat one and you're like, oh, that was really good. And then you're like, I want another one, and like but it's not too long. It's not too short. That's what we were trying to do with these segments. We were trying to get them to that perfect bite-sized, delicious morsel. Then you move on to the next one.
And then I do want to compliment your music choices.
Oh, thank you.
All throughout, I'm going, oh, I like that. Oh yeah, I could groove to that. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's good. It really made, especially with some of your backdrops, in scenery and places you went to. Very hip, very cool.
Thank you. Well, I'm a musician myself, and I take music really seriously. So it's like that's another aspect of this for me is that I really felt like it's part of what opened this up. It's like I feel like the music we got it right was going to broaden the appeal of the project. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, what did you find? Because I know you talked a lot about having to cut down interviews and that being a challenge. But overall, what did you find was the most challenging part of this process, if there's just one thing that you can mention?
Fundraising. I would say, it's like the raising the money, incredibly difficult challenge on this thing and keeping it fun, because I raised a lot of the money as we went, and you think, okay, can I afford to do this? Can I not afford to do that? How do I push this to, and that's why I was really creative about it, because we were shooting with different crews. you can't tell that watching the film because I really pushed each
amazing.
crew to keep the same level of quality. But that was incredibly difficult to wrangle all these different crews in different locations. It's like I'm completely new crew in Denmark, completely new crew in England, completely new crew, in the Twin Cities. That was really a challenge, and everything. But I had a baseline, and I gave everybody sort of guidelines of here's some examples of the kind of footage that I want, the examples of the quality, the level, and I pushed everybody, and so you also find that, it's one of those things that Hollywood's getting so wrong. It's like, you don't have to throw all this money at stuff. You have to throw the right amount of money, the right tools, the right people, and get it. Have a vision, have a goal. So, but I would say the fundraising was the hardest part, and I'm really thankful to all the people who contributed to our Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I have private investors, who put some money in. My wife and I put money in. It's like we just kind of all nursed it along until it succeeded. So yeah.
All right. I have to ask you this question. So where is the Eagle cockpit?
It is still in storage in England.
It is.
It's in storage in England. So, I'm waiting to see what's going to happen there. I'm trying to get some meetings with ITV, the owners of Space 1999, and I want to see what they think and, all that stuff. So
yeah, because that's the effort that went into building that, recreating it, which caught my wife's eye very much. Like, what? How much did that cost? Who did this? How did they build it? Where is it? And what's gonna? Because something like that is, I mean, you saw what happened. You got up to Ticonderoga.
Yeah.
You saw what that person has done building those Star Trek sets.
Yeah.
You just did a cockpit, but that cockpit, I mean, the images of you and Nick sitting in it, that was just as special as sitting on, with Shatner in his
I would
captain's
agree.
chair, because that just meant as much to him as I'm certain whenever Shatner sits in that chair at those sets.
Yeah. 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 No, it's exciting to have done that and accomplished it. I think that was kind of next level, to do something like that. So it was kind of fun to get that captured and those magical moments. So
because it's a sequence of the film. Like you said, you have to minimize what you can show, and showing what you laid it out, how they wanted to construct it, and then the finished product. Again, you look at how long those sequences are in the film. They're not that long, but they tell an interesting story about recreating something that's very, very special. Yeah. And doing such a really, really good job of it.
Oh, thank you.
As Nick himself said. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate that.
Yeah. What was that experience like watching it for the first time? And I would presume when you had a screener, was in a theater watching it with an audience. What was that like?
It was the first time I watched it with a full audience was like I said, in Louisville at the end of May, beginning of June, and I had people standing in line to watch the film. That was pretty cool. And then we had a packed auditorium. Nick Tate was actually in the audience when we watched it. What was cool was like the things that people would laugh at and the things that they were excited about, and to hear, you sit there and you kind of listen to the rhythm of the room and you feel it. And there were things that I intended with this that worked. They worked. There was very little that didn't work. You know what I mean? I did go back and after that cut, the cut you guys saw, I edited about 3.5 minutes out since then for pacing. But really the grand scheme of things, that's nothing, so it was just little tweaks, little bits and pieces that I thought things were dragging. When you watch it on the big screen, it's really different. The energy is really different than watching it on a computer or a TV or a phone, very, very different. And then last week we had our first screening in a full, big, huge theater, which was with the full sound and everything. So that was pretty epic. But yeah, it was a really cool experience, mainly because so many people were moved by it. That was the part that mattered to me the most. It's like, it's one thing to create a piece of art. It's another thing to have that piece of art actually impact people and have them take something away, from it. And that was my intent.
Yeah.
Adina?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say any
one of the things I was wondering, since you mentioned having all this other footage that you shot that didn't make it in, and yes, you talked about having the 50 years of fandom, like that secondary film. But do you have any plans to like release snippets of some of these extra conversations?
I think we could. Like when I go back and look at it, like we removed. There's a little fun story my friend Anna tells that would be a fun little excerpt that we didn't include in the film. Or, there was probably another, 3 to 5 minutes in my interview with her. Barbara Bain, we talk about the costumes in the show. That was something that, but I was like, man, that's so micro that you have to be a fan to care about that, right? And so I was like, the mainstream audience is going to care about the emotion of her and Anna interacting, so let's focus on that. But, Barbara Bain does talk about what it was like making Space 1999, the costumes and the sets. And I think that's something that'd be worth putting in a special edition. As I said, William Shatner goes a lot further into his perspectives on environment and the earth and those sorts of things. That's pretty interesting.
That would be, fascinating.
Yeah, that part was really cool. I'm just trying to think of other stuff that didn't make it in. Those are some of the key parts that I think about. Bill George, when I was with him, Bill, we got a little bit more into the Eagle. We talked a little bit more about specific episodes and what the Eagle does in episodes of the show. Mm-hmm. But then again, it was like, we can't have this in the film because, we're going to lose the audience. We don't want to have a mainstream audience go, wait, what? I've never watched that, and everything. But if you're a fan, you might be pretty excited to hear some of that stuff, So
yeah, you need the extra geeky and engineer edition, because I would like to hear the dude who built or did the conception of how this would work in real life. I want that. I want to see that part.
That will be that's in the
fandom one.
Beyond, that's in the fan one. Beyond,
okay, cool.
that whole sequence, and also he and I tour a thing called the Alpaca, which is the Dynetics lander that they designed to go to the moon, and there's a big tour that he and I did in that, which is pretty cool. So that's part of it too. So we're in like a real life eagle. It's kind of like an eagle actually. So that we did that. The Beyond is going to be pretty neat, and we're going to get further into how the guy Jan built. Like we show you after he's built it, right, and we put it together. But I'm gonna spend like 5 minutes let him just talk about how he did it, because it's pretty interesting when you start figuring out how he actually pulled it off. So yeah.
So if I may, I think it's about time we let you promote beyond just talking about the film. How can people get their hands on this and watch it for themselves or share it with others?
Well, it's not going to be fully released yet. We're waiting. We've entered it into some film festivals. We need to have our film festival premiere, which will be somewhere this fall, which will either probably be in Toronto or Sydney.
Ooh,
yeah.
I'm in Toronto.
Yeah. So we're entered in TIFF and waiting to see what's going to happen with that. And then we're also working on all our distribution for the film. Gotcha. So, the fan film, the Beyond the Eagle session, that's something you can pre-order. That will be available for streaming and for Blu-ray before the end of the year. But the other one, the Eagle Obsession, we have to kind of wait and see what happens with whoever's going to distribute it and everything.
Gotcha.
But we will be having some pop-ups. Like, for example, I am going to show it, a preview of it at, there's a big 50th anniversary Space 1999 convention in Los Angeles that's happening in September 13th and 14th, and I'm showing it twice there. Nice. We're working on trying to put together a showing in Dallas. There's going to be a showing in Boston. There's going to be another showing in the Twin Cities. So we do have a few showings that will be happening, sneak previews. So
awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Now I have to ask the question I always ask filmmakers when we have them on. Just for, people like myself who are budding filmmakers, what advice do you have for them? Especially if they see something like your film and they think, I want to do that, but it's just so grand and beyond what you would do at the start. What would you recommend for for budding filmmakers?
Well, I mean, the thing for me, this is going to be a complex answer. Give me a minute.
I love it.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, the complexity lies in the idea that I feel like the truly successful filmmakers have a vision and they stick to it. Now, that doesn't mean your vision doesn't, evolve or slightly shift or deviate as you learn things or produce things, but it's like having a clear vision of what it is you want to do and what you want it to be and what you want it to become and how you want that to impact people. Also having, marrying that with a realistic view of how you produce whatever your vision is. And I think that's incredibly important. In other words, you can have a vision of like I was just prepping a proof of concept for a TV series that we're going to be pitching soon. And, I could write something for that cost, $100 million. It's like, and then 1,000 blah blahs came across the hill. And then this, what I mean? Right. You have to reduce it down to, the core elements and what you need. You have to have a clear vision for that. And that vision has to align with the economics and with the materials available at hand. Right. If that makes sense. And I think that oftentimes filmmakers can be overly ambitious in a way. Like you can have all these big ideas and then you don't know how you're going to execute them. So then when you try to execute them, you execute them poorly, right? Whereas it'd be better to scale your ideas back and have simpler ideas that have enormous impact and that are executable. I think that's what I would advise a young filmmaker. Get a vision. Figure out how to bring it to life reasonably, scale it based upon reality, and then execute it and don't give up. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. So that would be my advice. So.
Besides the Eagle Obsession, besides what you're doing, Future Dude Entertainment, what are you doing in between, or what are projects that you're working on or have worked on that people will know more about your production company?
Well, if you go on YouTube to Dust, the sci-fi short channel, you can see two of my films. There's one called Parallel Man, which is an animated film, which stars John Cho and the late Lance Reddick, and it's a cool thing about parallel realities. It's a fun adventure. There's another film that I did called Oceanus, which is about an underwater city in the future and a disaster that strikes. Those are both projects that we want to develop into full features. And we've been pretty close, especially on Oceanus, to bringing that to life as a feature. COVID derailed one of the attempts we had. But the biggest problem I've had is pitching these ideas, which actually have, those both have millions of views. People like them a lot. I get all kinds of mail about them. The problem has been trying to convince a studio to take a risk on a new idea. If you notice, like if you literally look at the box office in the last month, you've got, multiple reboots and continuations and they're all like existing IP. There's nothing, they're not new ideas. And, it's like, what is this? Like the fourth iteration of Superman or whatever it is, right? You got, right. Another Jurassic movie, Fantastic Four. What is that? It's the third time, I guess, right?
I believe you're right. Yeah.
Fantastic Four.
The last one was a disaster.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. So when I go in, I found that a lot of the studio heads are very reticent to try new things and take risks without it being, really successful. I have a novel called Persephone, which is about first of all, I wrote a screenplay. It's about an adventure to the nearest star and the planet orbiting the nearest star, a real planet called Proxima B. And that's a story that I've developed and really fully thought out as a feature. And then Kevin J. Anderson, the Dune Star Wars X-Files author, he's a good friend of mine, and Kevin and I wrote a novel based on my screenplay, which is cool. So maybe that's enough to kind of get it, get some interest going on that one. And I do have some famous actors attached to that film, so we're still hoping to finance that and get that into production within the next 12 months or so.
That's
but
great.
It's a complex industry, and it's a real challenge. Another, I won't lie to say that there's part of the reason why I wanted to do this documentary also was just so people could get to know me as a creative and see what I can do. It's one thing when you have these ideas that cost tens of millions of dollars to produce, and then you got to find the money, and then they're like, well, you're a first-time director. It's like, well, not really, right? But no, have I done a big feature that cost $50 million? No, that kind of thing. But I think the Eagle Obsession is good enough to show somebody that they could trust me with millions of dollars, and that was part of that was sort of a secret goal of mine too, was for people to be able to see what I could do, and also get to know me as a creative and as a personality, which I think this film allows you to see as well.
It does. It does. You come out who you are, what you think, how you feel, your respect for those that came before you, and the accomplishments of others, and then also supporting the dreams of younger people, as I mentioned about the elementary school students. It really comes forward. I mean, if this was just going to be a fandom film, no, you're right. But if it's a look at the broad nature of what science fiction and how science fact come together, you did it very, very well. And again, yes, the Millennium Falcon, yes, the Enterprise, yes, the Eagle, they are actors, they're characters, they have personalities, and you see them, and like you were saying in the beginning, watching it crash at the very opening of the series,
right?
Like, no, why are they killing? They just killed the Eagle. Well, it's the same thing. Right. People got emotional in Star Trek 3, when the Enterprise is destroyed.
I remember being in that theater and people in tears when the Enterprise was destroyed, and it's these are characters. There are, but one of the things I also tried to do with this film was talk about the fact that the people who ride around in them are so important. And I was really excited to be able to share those role models that I had as a kid, to be able to say these are characters and people that I looked up to, and then also to be able to say not only were there sci-fi people that I looked up to, but there were real life people that I looked up to, like Carl Sagan and others. And so to get a chance to show that and talk about it was so important to me. I really, that meant a lot to me, and it was really cool because a couple of the audiences that I've shown this to, I got cheers when those people popped up. That was really cool. That was a really, really neat moment.
And it wasn't just that. You told the story about your parents.
Yes.
And growing up, and how getting an eagle for Christmas, and building models with your dad, and how he inspired you, and your mother were so important in your upbringing to bring you to where you are now. I mean, that's really true. Either you develop this love for science fiction and science fact on your own, or you have parents who motivate you and move you in that direction. And either way, the end result is, if you are someone like yourself and be able to share that passion with your audience, then you've come across as being very successful with what you want to do with your storytelling.
Well, the thing that's interesting about what happened with my parents is, I have to be honest, that it wasn't like they motivate. Like, I found the interest. Where I give them credit is they looked at me and said, aha, this is what he's into. Let's nurture this. You know what I mean? It's like, believe me, my dad was trying to get me to, throw the football around with him. And I was like, it just wasn't that interesting to me. I wanted to use my telescope. I wanted to go to the library. I wanted to, and I've always been athletic and a physical person, but that wasn't my goal, my target, And so what was neat is my father said, okay, I might be way into sports or whatever it is, but you know what? I'm also into aerospace, and I'm also capable of this. And I'm also, so my father branched out and said, I'm going to look into this, and I'm going to nurture him. I'm going to nurture this interest in him. And that was amazing. And, it's not like my mother was way into science fiction, but my mother was a librarian by trade before, I came around, and she made sure we got to the library, my sister and I, every single week. She was taking us to the library when we were kids, and that stuff mattered. It mattered a lot, So I had a version of this film that went a lot further into that. I think we had just enough of it right now, but I absolutely wish my parents were still around. They both passed away a few years ago, but I would have loved for them to see this film.
I think would have made a difference. Yeah, or no, it would have showed them just how that seed that they planted in you or helped to nurture with you,
right,
turned into something special. And I think I grew up watching science fiction. My parents had virtually no interest in it, but that didn't stop me from loving it, and they never discouraged me from it either.
That's the point, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So yeah, no, my dad, like, once they realized it, they were like, okay, let's take them to Kit Peak Observatory. That's something they did when I was a kid. Let's go look at this architecture. Let's go do this stuff. They were like, and I tried to do the same thing with my kids. When my kids were young, I was like, let's go to the airport. Let's go watch airplanes. Let's go to the, I took my son. I remember he was about 2.5, and I had a buddy who worked he was a fire chief. And I had my son, and I brought him over to the fire station. He got to sit in the fire truck and, turn the lights on, and that kind of stuff matters, man. I don't know if parents realize that, but that's how you light those fires. That's where you get the sticky engagement, and it's that stuff is so important. So important. So.
How old are your kids?
Well, at this point, they're 27 and 22. So.
Okay. So you've done your job.
I've done my job, yeah. But my younger son is actually studying. He's on his way to becoming an airline pilot. Actually, he's a very, very talented pilot, and so in some ways, growing up watching things like Star Trek and stuff, he took it that way and went in that direction. So I became a pilot. So yeah.
Well, we've got 2 members here in our group who have young kids, and they're doing as Brian said about his own daughter. He's motivating her to be able to do what she wants to do and be able to be whoever she wants to be. And I think that's what, I think that's the dream of any parent, is for their kids to move forward and to be successful. And
that's great.
Anything more for Jeff that you guys have to share with him, or question, or ask him about in the film, or so on?
I just want to say thank you for making this film, sir. It is a special film, and like I said before, it's the human story wrapped around all of the elements that you talk about that really make it special. So thank you for showing that. Thank you for showing who you are in this film too. I think that's really important. I think honestly, that's part of what makes it special, sir. Is we get to know you and your story and background and love for this stuff and why. And I think I want to echo what other people have said to you. That's important for people to have language around why they feel the way they do about whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
To them. Right. Yeah. So thank you.
No, thank you very much for saying that. And I truly appreciate it. You don't get a lot of opportunity sometimes to share your story with the world like that, and that's been a huge honor for me to be able to do that. And I thought it was really important that it was done well. If we're going to do it, do it right. So life is short, right? And this is and I think one of the final things I would say is that I feel like humanity has so much potential, and it's that last statement I make in the film about it being up to us, it really truly is up to us what we decide to do with this. It's like we really have a choice before us of like, are we going to choose Mad Max or Star Trek? And it feels it's feeling pretty Mad Maxy these days, in a lot of ways. And it's interesting because I often cringe because I'm like, science fiction was not supposed to be roadmaps. It was supposed to be a warning or a discussion point.
Right.
We were supposed to like when I'm looking at what's going on with AI, for example, and I'm like, what movies did you guys not watch?
Right.
It's so interesting to see this. And I'm not trying to be some gloom and doom guy. It's like there are interesting aspects of AI, but there's all kinds of just incredible dangers. And it's like really intelligent people, including like Jeffrey Hinton, who was the godfather of, he created the algorithms that are the basis of these large language models. And he's like, everybody, do you understand what we're doing and how dangerous this is, And so it's like, it's very interesting to watch. The only reason why I digress to that is it's like, I feel like we have to start making a choice as a species about whether or not we're going to grow up and get past all this kind of nonsense that we do, So that's one of the hopes that I have with this film, is that without it being, political or partisan or whatever, it does provide hope. And I have had people from many different walks of life and completely different political perspectives who all felt inspired by it. And that was something that I was really trying to do here, because I think that's necessary now too.
So. Adina, Chris, anything further? Or all right.
No, just that I think you struck the perfect balance between showing, here's the situation we're in, but there's hope. And right. I personally, when I finished it, I felt like, okay, good. I feel like there's hope. We can get there. We just need to really work towards it.
We have to. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I don't provide a roadmap in the film, but I certainly provide a spark. Yeah. If that makes sense, yeah. That's my hope. That's my hope. Yeah. Adina, I'm really intrigued. If you have any questions, I follow you in social media, so
oh, thank you.
Yeah, I've always wondered what you would think of this. So,
No, I loved it. It's just funny. You mentioned with the landers, the Dynetics, and the fact that it has some similarity to the Eagle, because they're of course one of our competitors. But I'm just, that's fine. It's all good. I mean, I really just want to, see anyone get back to the moon, and, just taking inspiration from science fiction. And like I said, the whole reason I got into the industry, I tell people this all the time, was watching science fiction like Star Trek. I did watch Space 1999, although Star Trek definitely had the most impact on me.
Sure.
So no, I really appreciated everything in the film that, again, I think I said this already, that tied the real world together. So I don't specifically have questions. I am interested, curious to see, more of the footage. So I don't know if I have. Yes.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I enjoyed it so much.
I just know you've got such an interesting space background and everything. So, you're part of my target audience. So this is great.
No, well, and achieved. I mean, I loved it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, it's good. It's good.
If I can offer a thought, you have all this footage. Mm-hmm. If you could maybe take these long interviews, like the one for William Shatner, and edit it into a YouTube video, I guarantee you, Star Trek fans would be lining up or wanting to see all that raw footage, because even where he gets, even if it goes in a little darker direction or whatever he wants to talk about, because Shatner, he can talk.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
he can talk.
Yeah.
The man, he can talk. Mm-hmm. Would love to see it, and even the interviews. I mean, the full interview with General Duke. I mean, that was so...
Oh, the General Duke, I should have mentioned that. The General Duke interview, that is one that we had we actually had a 45 minutes on, so what you saw was the expert 45 minutes, an excerpt for 45 minutes. And in that 45 minutes, he and I talked about tons of stuff. We talked about... space colonies and moon bases and the Gateway Station and the ideas, with the Artemis missions and private space initiative. We talked about all that stuff. It just didn't fit in this film.
I want to see that.
So honestly, we could almost make a Charles Duke, like a little mini doc just with the Charles Duke interview.
Yes, please.
We are giving you ideas here. We're giving you. We're brainstorming ways to make more of this than there is, because I know you're going to do the fandom film.
Yeah,
and that's telling the story from the point of the geeks and the nerds. Okay,
right.
But
in a
really
good way.
Seeing these interviews,
yes, in a good way, right, Brian?
Some of us are perfectly happy to call ourselves a geek, nerd, whatever. I'm here for that.
You did. Let me ask you this though: Did you go through the bullying process with that at all?
Not with yes and no, not with those terms. Yeah. But the fact that when I was a kid, most of my good friends were boys.
Okay.
And so the fact that I was a girl not doing girly things and hanging out with boys, I got a lot of bullying.
For that.
What we would call bullying now. At the
Right.
time it was I don't know what I thought about it at the time. I mean, I was not happy with it at the time. But I went through a lot.
Sure.
I was called words that when I was called them, I did not know what they meant at the time.
Sure.
And a lot of stuff but it was not so much because I was sciencey or geeky, but it was because my friends who had the same interests as me, computers, sci-fi, D&D, they happened to all be the guys.
Sure. No, that makes sense. I think what happened, just to digress to that for just a second, is here's what hit me. Okay, not like yourself, but for decades. Remember, there is an anti-intellectualism aspect in this society where it seems like the idea of being smart. It goes all the way back to childhood for me. Like, it was a problem to be smart. It felt like, right? And I'm not the only person. I've known hundreds of people in my life who said they went through this where they were persecuted for being intelligent, right? Yeah. And then this idea that like, okay, so now we're going to segment and we have this sort of tone and stereotype of what we, are going to say these smart people are. And the other thing is, some of us who happen to have been very smart, we also didn't necessarily, I was also athletic. I was on the track. There's all kinds of athletic things I did that I was very good at, right? That didn't fit the stereotype of whatever it was, right? Yeah. And so, and there was one thing I noticed over the years is the people who would talk about something they loved that happened to be adjacent to science fiction, something, something creative, and they would look down at the ground and they go, "Yeah, I'm a nerd." Or they go, "Yeah, I'm a geek," right? Oh, wow. It's a self-deprecating thing, right? So then when you combine the self-deprecation to the actual bullying that so many of us went through for over the years, and I understand there are people who are like, "Hey, we're gonna reclaim this word." Like, there are other words in our culture, the cultural vernacular that people have tried to reclaim or repurpose, right? And I get it, and I'm not against it. I just never, for me, I just have never been like, it's just not where I feel like I'm coming from. It's like, because I'm like, there's nothing wrong with just kind of being smart and creative. And if you're smart and creative happens to align with science and align with science fiction, something like that, why does that have to be a subculture? Why can't that? You know what I mean? That to me deserves to be just as powerful as someone who is into, like you don't see someone say, I'm a baseball nerd. Yeah, I'm a baseball nerd. No. But you know what I mean? I'm talking about culturally, right? Yeah. Culturally, you don't look down at the ground because you love football.
Right, exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
It's funny when you talk about the bullying, because growing up, I never really felt like I was bullied. People didn't really call me nerds. People thought it was weird that I liked Star Trek so much, but they seemed to accept it. My family accepted it. But I've been doing my YouTube channel yelling about Star Trek for the last about 4 years, and I get a lot of positive comments, which I'm loving. But I just feel like in the last maybe year, I'm starting to actually get a lot of the "you're a nerd" or like, "Oh, you must love your mom's basement" comments, and just or this isn't real, and it's like, this is a weird thing. And I'm like, I've seen it like where it just pops up, but I've also heard, it's all part of being on YouTube and it's the thing, but it's such a strange thing to be getting bullied by someone who doesn't know me.
Who doesn't know you. Right.
Right. And they just happen to click on a video, and it's like, okay, well,
I will tell you this.
It's such a weird thing.
If people were to meet me on the street, they'd have no idea that I have this in my office. Does that make sense? Okay, they would have no clue. And I'm not ashamed of this being my office by any stretch of the imagination.
Look
right?
at Dina's background. She loves this stuff.
This is like I called it in the film, my fortress of inspiration, because these are all things that inspire me. Right? These are all things that I grew up thinking were super cool, and I love these designs and stuff and everything. I think just to wrap up this thought, and I really appreciate you guys discussing it.
Sure, of course,
because I just think it's like having a chance to talk about these ideas. It doesn't come up a lot. And again, I don't want to discourage anyone who feels positive about these sorts of things. But there's another side to it also. And it's and I'll still hear words like that thrown around, and they're certainly not thrown around out of love. I'll hear people say it, And I guess the thing is this, the last thought I want to have that I want to run past you guys is just the idea that, what can we do to make being intelligent and creative and open-minded, having that be boosted in this society, right? And not kind of subculturalized, because I think that that's part of what's wrong. I think that we need to elevate being smart, because I think that would save a lot of the problems we're having. I don't know that they would happen with a populace that was a little bit more reasoning.
Yeah, I think it's getting through to kids as much as you can, is one of the things. But what's interesting is when you say that, because I haven't seen that as much just because of where, and I guess the community I grew up in. So
Sure.
I have two parents who both had master's degrees. And then where I, grew up on Long Island, and the fact that I was in the honors AP track from, once all that started. So I was always surrounded with people so being smart, and intelligent, intellectual, going to the library, knowing that you're probably going on to for a college degree, all those things, that was all normal, and so I didn't see any of that being put down, I
Right.
guess.
Right.
And then going into college, at college, you don't really see that because you're in college. And
Sure.
then going into my career in the aerospace industry, again,
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
so,
Yeah.
and it was really funny. You had made one comment in the movie about talking to someone who was a flat earther or something, and because they just happened to
with
see a YouTube
Shatner.
video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel this question sometimes when I give science talks. People ask me, how do I deal when I come across someone who denies the Apollo landing or a flat earther? And honestly, I don't come across these people. I
Yeah.
don't.
You're
don't see
hanging
these
out with
people.
the choir. Hanging out with the choir, and that's great. That's awesome. That's great. But the one thing I will say is that, I think something that's happened for me with my life and my career. So you understand, it's I've worked as an entrepreneur. I've raised a lot of money in my life, and I've done all these things, right? With this stuff, I interact with people who have no clue about science fiction, these sorts of stories, this sort of stories. It's just nothing to do with it to them. As a matter of fact, it's really alien. I had a guy who came up to me last week who watched the film. He was in the audience, and he actually told me that he actually has a real disdain for science fiction and for science fiction fans. And he said this film was the first time in his life that it actually helped him understand it, and it opened his mind.
Wow.
He said this
That's-
opened my mind to something that I actually actively disliked. And I've been around people throughout my life who are like, I can't stand this stuff. They think, to them, Star Trek, and Chris, you can tell me how but people are like, yeah, what is that show? There are these people with funny foreheads. And you know what I mean? They're running around with these funny costumes and these funny foreheads. And it's just, to them, it's like a dress up, comedic dress up sort of thing, right? Now, to those of us who are engaged with and who get it, it's a different thing. But I mean, even for us, I would assume there are people who take it kind of far. You know what I mean? There's some people, you're like, wow, you really like this. It's like, like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's really interesting. So, but I would say that when it comes to general mainstream culture, and there's a reason why Star Wars has a lot more popularity than Star Trek. Right? I mean, if you look at its core, Star Trek, at least years ago, was much more about, there was this grounding, there was this science, basis to it. There was whereas Star Wars, it's more of a fantasy. It's I call it a space techno fantasy because it's got space elements and techno elements, but the truth is none of those are really scientifically grounded or anything. It's just it's a fantasy. It's just so different than Lord of the Rings or something. It's just in a different environment.
And it's also, I find with Star Wars, it's very much, and I granted things like Andor have gone a long way to show the shades of gray in that universe.
Sure.
But I've always felt like Star Trek is let's have the complex conversations around morality, especially something like DS9, where Star Wars is good versus evil.
Yes.
And it's much easier to consume
and honestly, if I can jump I didn't even understand the Empire until Andor. You know what I mean? Like all these years watching Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
you see what I'm saying? It's like, what is the Empire? Like, why did they do this? What is this about? What's this whole thing? You know, it's not. I mean, you know, I've watched all the movies. Empire is my favorite one. You know, and everything. But Andor is where it felt like it was kind of for grown-ups finally, and there was like a story, and there's a basis in politics and depth, you know, and everything. But the truth is, and honestly, Andor, and to some degree, played more like a 70s sci-fi show than it played like Star Wars, if you think about it.
Yes.
I can see that.
makes sense.
I want to real briefly, Mr. Morris, you talked about like how do we get there? How do we help this happen? How do we change the narrative about how people respond to intelligence or creativity to where it can be more positive? And I'm just a big believer, like it starts with us as individuals living a certain way, upholding certain things, and setting the example for anybody that's watching us. And probably there's way more people watching us than we realize. It's way deeper than our kids. It's our coworkers. It's our neighbors, how we live, how we respond to adversity, how we look at, talk about, react to things that are different than us, how we respond to things that make us uncomfortable. Like I know my kids are watching way more intently than I can ever fathom as a father.
Yes.
And there's days I think I do really well and days where I miss it. And even on those days when I miss it, I think it's important for my kids to see me say, I did that wrong. I responded.
I was very, very into that with my kids. It was very important to me to be able to say, hey, Dad made a mistake, or Dad doesn't know everything. Dad's still figuring it out. You know?
No, Mom knows everything. No, Mom knows everything. Mom knows everything except for Spanish. That's the line in my house.
I was going to add, Dad did that wrong, but you still need to do what I told you to do.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I think is really missing that we need as a society right now, we need better role models. And I think that when I look at media and entertainment, I mean, it's one thing to see these characters who are good at beating people up, right? There's plenty of that, right? We can find that all day. People who are good, they're cunning, and sure, some of those characters are really cool, and we like watching them, and we enjoy them. But one of the things that I really missed from when I was a kid, part of why, again, it wasn't just about the science fiction. It was about this is exploring the future, and it's exploring ideas, and it's using our minds, like Spock and his quest for reason and the conflict with him, between his emotional human side and his Vulcan side, and seeing those things, that was really, really something as a child to see that stuff and think about it. Did that make sense? So when I think back to those characters and their interactions and how, Kirk was trying to do the right thing. You watch Battlestar Galactica back then. Apollo was a good dude. He meant to do the right thing, right? And I look at so much science fiction nowadays, and all these broken characters and these people who have, they're drug addicted. They've got this problem. They've got that problem. But yet this situation will make them better. They will become, it's like, well, like what happened to finding the best and the brightest who worked and kept it together and did great? And then we throw them into a meat grinder, right? You go, these people are super together, and then we're going to put them in a situation that challenges them. I feel like media needs to get back to that, of creating role models that kids could look up to. And I'm not saying they're perfect people. But it's more they're striving to be the best, right? It's not about being snarky. It's not about being negative. It's about I'm positive, I have a belief, and I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to try to create something good and do something good. Yeah. I feel like if we could start fostering more and more of that in the society, we could turn it around.
Yeah, for me, it was TNG. It was Captain Picard, because, my parents went through a pretty brutal divorce. There was a lot of conflict. And so growing up and seeing Captain Picard and his crew just do the right thing and work through their own disagreements with each other in a peaceful and respectful way just kind of blew me away, and something I looked up to. And now I'm not a science person. I love science, but I just find I don't have that mathematical mind. But Star Trek did lead me to kind of the career I'm in now, which is conflict resolution, just because I grew up with this idea that you don't need to beat people up to
No,
solve a
you should
problem.
be
You
trying
could
to avoid
have
that.
a conversation.
That's the last ditch, right? I will be honest with you. I have a fantasy of creating a next generation documentary as a sequel to this.
Oh, yes,
Because-
please make
Yes.
it happen.
Yeah, because I will be honest with you, far more than the Eagle, far more than any other bit of science fiction content, Star Trek: The Next Generation impacted me the most.
Yeah.
Same.
Wow,
Yep.
those seven seasons.
You would have a built-in audience right away.
I think it could be huge, and I that's almost something that I'd almost like to get some sort of a campaign going to do that, because
Yeah,
the other
let us
thing
know
is,
how to make this happen. We're in.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's keep in contact and brainstorm this, because I think you have really hit on your next one.
well, all the cast is still alive, right?
Yep.
I think that if we could talk about the cultural implications of the Next Generation and how it, like, I'll example it. My parents, who we talked about, they weren't into Star Trek, but they started watching Next Generation and they got into it to the point that, they were living down in Indianapolis. I was living up here in Minnesota, and we would watch episodes and then we'd get on the phone and talk about them. And I've heard this from a bunch of people. This wasn't just me. I've heard
this happens right now. There's watch parties all the time.
Yeah. I mean, like that show impacted our society in a very deep way, and I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to do a documentary that's just about 90 minutes about the Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Well,
That'd be awesome.
I can tell you, we would all love to be, or I'm sure, I'm speaking for the group. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But I think we'd all love to be, to help out and be a part of it, because the show means a lot to us. The series means a lot to us. The characters mean a lot to us. And your next.
That's great. That's great.
I think you definitely would get a kickstart going without difficulty of getting the financing to do something like this, including the type of people who made it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well,
with that conversation, I'd like to close by reading what Michael Okuda said about the Eagle obsession. He posted this on Facebook, and I just had to share it with you. He wrote, "Just got a chance to preview Jeffrey Morris's The Eagle Obsession feature documentary. It reminded me of how much I love the cool brilliance of the iconic spaceship from Space 1999. Jeffrey's film is a joyous exploration of the show's impact through the eyes of a little boy who, inspired by the Eagle, grew up to be a real-life filmmaker. I'm not sure where the Eagle Obsession will be released, but keep your eyes open." And I think that's exactly sums up the dream of your film.
thank you.
And, as a kid who watched Space 1990 when I first ran in the U.S., and seeing established American actors in the lead roles was pretty impressive. Yet, it wasn't for the mind and vision of the great Jerry Anderson, all this world would not have happened. So let us celebrate Moonbase Alpha. Let's celebrate the Eagle. Let's celebrate the dream that 1999 would have seen us with a permanent base on the moon. Now, I know that we had all hoped in 1975 this would be a reality, but it hasn't happened yet. So let us keep dreaming and hoping for the future that brings us closer to that future. And where is my darn flying car I was promised? Well. Thank you again, Jeffrey, for being our guest, and we look forward to greater days for Future Dude and all your science fiction. And as always, I leave you with these parting words. Look to the sky, live long and prosper.